Brook is one of those One Piece characters where your brain kind of relaxes when he shows up. Like, it is Brook, he is going to make a skull joke, ask for something insane, play music, scream, maybe get cut in half and somehow be fine. And that is exactly why this new Brook stuff feels so weird. Because One Piece has this nasty habit of taking the funniest person in the room, waiting until everybody stops guarding themselves, and then quietly telling you they were carrying one of the saddest or most important clues in the story. And right now, with the latest Brook flashback conversation, it feels like Oda is doing that again. Not just Brook had a sad past. We already knew that. This feels more like Brook was never random. The part people forget is that Brook already told us he was more than a musician. Back in Thriller Bark, he said he used to be the leader of a battle convoy from a certain kingdom. At the time, that sounded like flavor text. Cool little backstory detail. Something to make him feel older and stranger than the rest of the crew. But now that Elbaf is pulling his past back into the story, that line hits completely differently. Because One Piece almost never brings old details back just to say, remember this? It brings them back when the old detail was quietly sitting next to something huge the whole time. So the question is not just what happened to Brook before the Rumbar Pirates. The better question is, why are we learning it now? The recent chapter conversation around Brook is not just about making him sadder. It is about placing him inside a bigger political and historical mess. We are talking about kingdoms, old loyalties, people in power, betrayal, and this feeling that Brook's life before piracy was connected to something way larger than a random country. And that is where the Davy D. Brook theory comes from. To be clear, I am not stamping that as confirmed. That is fandom theory territory. But I get why people are grabbing onto it, because One Piece keeps making the word Davy feel less like a joke and more like a buried piece of history. The Davy backfight used to feel goofy. Now, suddenly, that word keeps sounding heavier. And Brook is weirdly perfect for that kind of reveal. Think about it. He is old enough to be connected to history most Straw Hats could never touch. He spent decades alone, which makes his timeline feel separated from everybody else's. He is tied to death in a way no other Straw Hat is. He is a musician, which sounds harmless, but in One Piece, songs and inherited stories matter a lot. Bink Sake is not just a song anymore. It feels like a memory that survived longer than the people who first sang it. So if Oda wanted one Straw Hat to carry a hidden thread from the past into the endgame, Brook is a way better choice than he looks at first. That is the trick. He looks unserious, so the clue gets to hide in plain sight. And I actually like that this is not turning Brook into the secret main character or anything like that. That would feel too much. The better version is that Brook is important in a very One Piece way. Not because he is secretly stronger than everyone, not because he has some chosen one bloodline that solves the story, but because his life touched something that the world tried to bury. That is way more interesting. It means Brook can stay Brook. Still weird, still funny, still the guy who can ruin a serious moment with one sentence. But now every joke has this extra shadow behind it. The joke still works, it just starts pointing at something. And that is exactly how One Piece makes a character feel deeper without replacing who they are. The real reason this matters is the endgame. One Piece is not in the part of the story where random flashbacks are cheap. Every new piece of history has to earn its space because the story is already juggling the Void Century, Joy Boy, Emu, the World Government, Elbaf, the God Knights, the Final Road Poneglyph, and whatever the One Piece actually is. So when Brook's past starts getting attention now, I do not think it is just emotional decoration. It feels like setup. Maybe it explains a kingdom. Maybe it connects to Davy. Maybe it gives Brook one personal reason to stand against the people behind the world's history. Or maybe the answer is simpler than the theories, and Oda just wants us to realize that Brook's grief was never isolated. It was part of the same world that hurt everybody else. That is why this Brook reveal works so well. It does not need to scream at you. It just changes the way you look at him. The skeleton who used to feel like comic relief suddenly feels like a witness. Someone who lived through pieces of history the crew still does not understand. Someone who may have been standing near the edge of the endgame before Luffy was even born. And that is such a One Piece thing to do. Make you laugh at a character for years, then make you replay every little detail because the joke might have been hiding the clue. So yeah, I do not know if Davy D. Brook is real, but I do think One Piece just made Brook feel way too important to ignore.